Yo, it's your brother Yafeuh Balogun back at you one more
Oh, what's going on?
day mouth today. Oh my God, I'm scared. But hey, look, we're gonna discuss Islam and black folks. Islam and black folks. Let me just say in advance, just kind of give a disclaimer. Whatever discussed tonight may or may not be the position of the host. I just want to say that. However, I think it's real candid, a much need for us as black men, as black people, African people, etc., to have these safe spaces to be able to discuss these topics. And really, nobody's really asking this question: what has Islam done for black folks? You know what I mean? So, hey, we're here to talk about it, here to discuss it. I'm gonna say from the outset, I come from a Muslim family, the Nation of Islam in the early '60s, and then my some of my family members converted over to Sunni Islam with Elijah Muhammad's son. You know what I mean? And so it's always been that dynamic for me. However,
hmm
when you study the history of Islam, there is some contradictions that exist. So these are some of the things we want to sit up and discuss tonight. We're not trying to offend nobody. However, we will be truthful about our position. So again, whatever these gentlemen say may or may not reflect the position of the host, but we're gonna have the conversation. How you doing, brothers out here?
You know I'm always good when I come out here and get to talk, man. Get to talk shit with you, man.
and I see we got our comrade Sandiata. Sandiata, introduce yourself, man. Tell us about yourself, just a little bit about yourself.
Man, I'm just trying to do the good work, man. And trying to spread Pan-Africanism, try to unite my people, man, and just give awareness. That's what we need, man. We need to have this open conversation, this platform, because people don't know. People don't
Yeah.
know, especially I'm down south, Alabama, country boy, and definitely people don't know in my area.
Where you
You
from in
know what I'm
Alabama?
saying?
Where you from in Alabama?
Man, I'm from a small town originally, LaFell, and but I know about Chambers County, Lee County, man, the Montgomery area, Tuskegee, Selma. I know about all that area, man.
Okay, okay, good.
Yeah,
I passed through Alabama here and there, so I think it's a good space. You know what I mean? So
yeah, man.
definitely got
Good
some
people,
good
man.
cooking. Definitely got some good cooking
Yeah,
in
yup,
Alabama. You
yup,
know what I
yup.
mean? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, man. So we got the professor. Professor, we kind of and yeah, and it ain't no formality with this conversation. Feel free to chime in. I'm just gonna ask a question or two, and then we're gonna kind of bounce off that. You know what I mean? But outside of that, chime in. No formality. Um. So Zahir, I hear that a lot of folks talk about Islam being productive for black people. I guess my question to you, this is my question. I want to start this off that way, and then you can also chime on this too, Sunday out if you feel the need to. When you look at the Nation of Islam and you look at some of those people from the Nation of Islam in 1975 converted over to Sunni Islam, do you see any positive in that, or do you see like what's your what from where you stand right now? Did
Yeah.
you did you see that as a potential gain for black folks as a whole?
Not necessarily, right?
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is because um, it's sort of like moving from Democrat to Republican almost. You know what I mean? And sometimes we don't understand these things in their totality, right? One book I want to recommend here, everybody, is this book here called Afrocentricity: The Theory of Social Change by Malafi Asante. And he goes into this very well in like 10 pages. He really breaks this down because he calls Islam a form of Arab nationalism. And what he was saying
hmm
with that is that there's attitudes and behaviors. There's the culture of the Arab is intertwined with Islam, right? And so when you go into Islam, you're upholding their standards. You're upholding Mecca. You're upholding their land as the holy land, and you put it before yours, right? And
Right.
in a sense, even going from the Nation of Islam, even which a lot of people can have issues with, but at the same time, at least they did speak directly to black people, right? Versus when they
hmm
left, right? That message went away, right? Because now it's going to go over to this so-called universalism. But even Malafia Sante in his book, he was saying how, you know, every one of these religions are going to start off nationalist, and only becomes universal after it establishes itself. So after Islam gets established as the dominant religion, as the dominant force, then it can say, okay, all you other people can kind of come on in, but you're going to come in under our dominance. You're going to come in
Right.
speaking our language. You're going to come up practicing our culture. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was going deep into like how they treat their women and their culture that was in their territory versus how African people treat their women. It was two
Mm-hmm.
different separate things. You know, one has to be dominated by the man, the other one was more of a reciprocal relationship. But when we start to take on other people's culture and ideals, what ends up happening is we become more like them. And like he says, and we've all heard this before, we out Arab the Arabs when it comes to Islam. We out, you know, European the Europeans, you know, we out Christian the Christians
Mm-hmm.
every time. So that's my main problem, and that's why I don't see it as a plus.
You got something on that, Santiago?
Man, he spoke the truth on it, and I feel like leaving the NOI was probably the worst move. At least they were kind of black nationalists. At least they spoke against the Arab supremacy. You know, you leave that and you go into multiculturalism. You
Mm,
know, where the Arabs is on top and setting the tone, like Zahir said. Um, I get, you know, the NOI has their leaders, you know, for Farrakhan, Elijah Muhammad, and Farrakhan, whichever, you know. So we all have a problem with hierarchy, but man, at least you are dealing directly with your people to where you're branching off now, and you got to listen to a different race. About a
yeah.
political, about you know what I'm saying, about your political matters, about your struggle that's going on in
Mm,
America. Yeah,
Right, right. Have either one of y'all ever been to Philadelphia?
no, I
You ain't
have.
been to Philadelphia?
I have, but not really kick it.
Gotcha. Man, I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
this is just my perspective, and like I said,
Hmm.
give my disclaimer. I could be wrong with this, but my perspective of Philadelphia, I've been there a couple times in my life, and then just kind of looking at the culture after. And if anybody from Philadelphia that observes this in the future, you know, feel free to comment and share all that good stuff. But it just seemed like in Philadelphia, it seemed like half the city is Muslim. It's
Right.
like it's real strong and real dominant. And I always try
Hmm.
to, you know, just looking through YouTube, I just tried to figure out why. Why was Philadelphia so dominant? Like you look at like
Hmm.
even the names of some of the people. Uh, a lot of folks got Muslim names
Hmm.
in Philadelphia, the young people. So I always thought that was just it was interesting. Um, what do you think? And this is a topic that really struck a nerve to me, guys, about Islam. You know what I mean? Because I'm gonna be you know very forthcoming. Like for me, just kind of growing up, that was kind of like a safe thing for me. It was a comfortable thing for me to kind of be around my parents and my uncles and things of that nature, and kind of really discussing being around that culture, but not necessarily the Arab version per se. But you know what I'm trying to say.
Mhm.
But what do y'all think about? We talk about the transatlantic slave trade, but
Hmm.
nobody talks about the Arab trade. Let's talk about it,
Hmm.
man. That's really the, you know what I'm saying? That's really the, you know, the elephant in the room is the Arab slave trade. You know, tell us a little bit about that if you can.
You know, they would cut off the dicks of the men in the Arab slave
Hmm.
trade over there on the
Right.
east. You know, the Arab slave trade started before the transatlantic slave trade, and you know it ended way after the transatlantic slave trade. It ended at around 1960, I think, somewhere around that time. You know, Saudi
Hmm.
Arabia being one of the last countries to end the slave trade, you know. And this is the crazy thing about it is like you know, people say, you know, I know some of my Marxist socialist buddies, you know, they like to say racism started with the transatlantic slave trade, but what happened with the Arabs? You know, obviously there was a racism over there, you know, that gave them the supremacy over black people. So that slave trade that they did, it was the same thing, right? I mean, the slave trade ended up propagating the Arabs on top of the blacks. This is why like people like Khalid Muhammad, right? He would say everywhere you go, you're gonna have the black folks on bottom and something else on top, so so
Mm-hmm.
I mean that Arab slave trade, I think, is the reason why I think it's not talked about is because it happened in East Africa. And so like one, it happened in East Africa. And so when people don't consider themselves Pan-African, they're not thinking about the entire continent, right? And so that's one reason. So they're not identifying with the people in the East. And then the second reason is because it's not the story that people want to hear, right? Like they want Christianity to be the bad thing, but they don't want to
Mm-hmm.
have any truth being told about their Arabs, their Arab friends. So, and not to mention about the rape of the black women that they used to do. These harems that they had during this slave trade period. So, yeah.
Man, one of the first images. You finna say something, Sadiata?
Yeah, I was about to say, to my understanding, I thought they invaded North Africa too. North Africa was
Right.
kind of, sort of like the fall of West African empires. We're talking about Mali and everybody.
Right.
Um, you know, from Berbers and everybody invading, attacking indigenous Africans that lived in their area. Kind of ran the indigenous African that's North Africa that was in North Africa out of that region. You know what I mean? Kind of like it was like a brutal massacre when they came through. You know, and the sad thing about that, I think, is they flipped a lot of our brothers. Like they converted our people to Islam, and our people, being black Muslims, invade and conquer other Africans who weren't Muslims. And that's not talked about a lot.
And that's the thing, like, you know when people say West Africa Islam spread peacefully, that's not really the case, because they had those
Hmm.
political transformations. Like everything was political. So when they came in there, it's not just they heard the call and everybody just bowed down and heard the truth. No, is because they were taking over trades, and they were
Hmm.
taking the leadership, and that leadership was then becoming absorbed under what? Somebody else's culture, somebody else's language, somebody else's God, somebody else's principles. And so it's not just a an all peaceful thing. And it's like part of my issue sometimes is like we all just want to get along, and so we want to ignore this, and we want to accept Christianity as the only bad person, or the Europeans as the only bad person. But anybody who studied Kemet will know, right, that we have all kind of enemies. What Dr. Clark say? um we can't trust anybody, right?
Hmm.
Africa has no friends. So,
Right.
that's the things we need to keep in mind. That's
Hmm.
some of the importance of keeping it race first.
Hmm.
Keeping your people first, because you can't trust these other cultures all the time.
Man, and I just remember being a kid. Y'all remember in Roots? Y'all both seen Roots?
Yeah,
Hmm.
When
Yeah.
Kuta Kinte, he was when he was praying, and in Islam they call it salat or whatever, and he was
Hmm.
praying, and I thought that was just like the blackest thing he was doing, because he was praying to Allah, right? And all the kids in the classroom, they was, so the way it's set up, it makes it come across like Islam being our original religion as far as being
right,
Right.
black folks.
right.
That's
Right.
what it makes it come across. That's the perception
Hmm.
that you get. And then,
Hmm.
of course, that was the early '90s. You know what I mean? Elementary school or whatever for me. But what do y'all think about that? What do y'all think about that perception that's often given by some folks in the community? Not naming nobody in particular, but some folks give off the perception that Islam is our original religion as far as being
Well,
black
let's
folks.
well let's talk about this, man. When we talk about Africans, trading Africans, selling Africans, we got to talk about some of the seeds that allow that to happen. Like
Mm.
it's easy to sell someone who doesn't share your own religion or share your own practice. And Islam coming in West Africa, it's easy to go, that brother ain't like me. Let's get him out of here. Make him a prisoner. I think, man, not having so much of not having an African spirituality practice that's political was damaging to us, you know, and it made us divisive where it was easy to sell and trade. You
Mm,
know what I mean? It's easy to sell and trade. Not to say that you know, they didn't sell each other. You know, they say that, you know, Muslims didn't sell other Muslims to America. But I damn sure know that they will sell somebody who wasn't easy. You know what I mean?
right,
Easy. You don't
right. And
share,
to that,
yeah.
yeah, and to that point too, that's what I mean about Islam being political. Is a lot of people would even
Hmm.
try to get out of slavery by, converting over to Islam. So it's always
Right.
political, and it's like I think we all, most of us, when we get into the conscious community, we go through those phases. Like for me, Malcolm X was the first hero. So you
Hmm.
think Islam is the thing, right? I mean,
Right.
we don't know too much outside. We
Hmm.
didn't know too much about
Hmm.
African spirituality, and still to this day, we don't know a lot about it. You know,
Right.
so like all they put out there was Islam for us. And so what ends up happening is it tells this kind of false narrative and it gets us to
Hmm.
believe that. And so when we go back to the continent, for those of us who do, right, it's like we get this different kind of picture painted because we don't see that. And then
Right.
we have to learn about these other stories like no, 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 this isn't that. And then what ends
Hmm.
up happening is a lot of our people try to make up these stories like, oh, where Arabs are really black, you know what I'm saying? But it's like,
Right.
don't do that.
No, brother.
Do that. Because it ends up, people want to, I think, what is it term? Cognitive dissonance, where it's like
Hmm.
the information contradicts what we've been told, so they try to compensate. Nah, bro, no, no, no. Like we got to tell the truth. That's not our original God. What
Hmm.
are the original God names? Mau or Olodumare. You know what I mean? Or who's our original gods? You know what I'm saying? Shango, Bisio, Ogun, Mamiwata. Like those are the names that we got to learn and
Hmm.
know what the differences are.
Right.
Right on.
Wow, that's deep. That is deep. That is deep. That is deep. So I guess we kind of discussed a little bit about our perspective on Islam, so to speak. At least talked about Islam. Some of the things that it's done historically, the slavery aspect of it, because that's how Islam spread through war, obviously. Um, in you guys' opinion, in your opinion, in terms of the spiritual tradition, how can this current generation, and maybe not this current generation, but the next generation or two that's coming, how can they closely align themselves with a tradition that actually makes sense? That's not one that makes them look down upon themselves because of the way their hair look or the way their lips look or their skin complexion. How can they more so align themselves closer with something that makes sense for them?
That's a good question. I think number one is study your ancestors, right? Like always know what your true ancestors' traditions are, right? And also look at the pictures that are being depicted, right? So a lot of times what you'll see is a very light-skinned pictures being depicted of a god or something like that, or something that any god that doesn't look like you always have to question that and say, well, why is this happening? And you have to look at like what this is why I think this book right here is good. If you want to look at it, you got to read books like this because it's telling you to look at any kind of religion or culture that's saying big up to Africa, right? So if you look at like the Isheshe, what they call it, or Ifa, and they have Iliefe, like a holy city, or my culture, Awe, that looks at Noche, the holy city, and tells stories of West Africa. You know that those people are gonna look like you, and you know those people are gonna have those same kind of features that you have. And so that's a good place to start looking, I think, and just be aware of how these different supremacies played a role in the development of Christianity and Islam. And why is it that you have to learn Arabic, right? Because language is a big part of this. What is
Hmm.
it about Arabic that if, like he's saying in the book, if God God's gonna speak to you in your language. So why do you gotta learn Arabic and stuff like that? And if you are gonna
Right.
learn another language, learn the language of your people, your African people, because they're gonna be telling you the story of your people, and you don't have to learn the story of somebody else and then put them above yours. So that's one of the things I wanted to look at. That's one of the things I think we should talk
Gotcha. You got anything on that, Sundiata?
Yeah, we fighting for the youth for their minds. So we got to
about.
get out here and recruit. Um, we can't keep the knowledge to ourselves. Um, we have to go out here and spread, African spirituality, Pan-Africanism on a grassroots level because they recruiting hard. One thing I give it to, the Hebrew Israelites, NOI, any other organization, they recruit hard. Don't matter if rain, snow, wherever the weather is, man, they outside, man, they outside. But I don't see us outside, and I think that's a problem. That that brothers and sisters, when they want to come to something consciousness, they are introduced to that first. So that
Yeah,
that
I think that that
that
is.
bothers me a lot. That bothers me a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, I think
So,
that we got to start expanding like what Pan Africanism is. Like we got to start
hmm
expanding all of this stuff. Like, I think I want to say we get too caught up in ourselves. Like we get too like, oh, we don't want to do no cultural shit. We just revolutionaries. We ain't got no time to go out
hmm
there and just have some fun. Like get the fuck out of here. We gotta, go out,
right,
look at what they're doing. If they standing out there and they talking to people, maybe we need to do that.
right.
Maybe a little bit of Pan-Africanism has to get out of the political world and start dealing with people and what they're dealing with. How can Pan-Africanism
hmm
help you in like almost in your relationship or get a job or something like that? Like how can all this stuff
hmm
help you and how does it relate to the bigger picture? So maybe we just have to start expanding how we relate to people in the community with being African, especially at this Pan-African time.
And y'all know damn well, them Hebrew Israelites. I know they be on probably. Well, you know what? When I was in Atlanta with you,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
we saw the Hebrew Israelites by that college downtown, right?
hmm
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's the
They out
same
there.
thing. It's the same thing in Dallas. They downtown by the college. It's
hmm
the same thing. Like they right there. When you get off the train in Dallas, like the public train, like everybody can ride in public, they get out. First thing you're gonna run into is the Hebrew Israelites. And y'all know how they do. If they gonna antagonize some people walking by, you know what I'm saying? A few people gonna pull out and look, and they're gonna get a little small little crowd going, but they educate people. And it's an aggressive form. And then you look at it, and I know how we feel about these big marches and demonstrations and whatnot. But the fact that them Hebrew Israelites is not one organization. There are probably many different groups, different factions of
Right.
Hebrew Israelites, but at least for the last few years, they have come together enough to get 800-900 people together. And even
hmm
though it's a march, I mean the sight of it, 800 folks marching in purple, you know what I'm saying, in a formation
hmm
with some discipline,
Right, right.
Right. Right.
It's attractive other people. And
Remember how
let me
they
say
came out for Kyrie. Remember how they came out for
hmm
Kyrie. You know what I mean? They
right,
marched
right.
around
Uh, let me say this. When I last time I was in Togo, them Christians were doing that. They was at the marketplace and they brought this big speaker and they're just like I didn't understand everything they were saying, but I could hear them because they'd be like blah 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 Jesus Jesus and my priest was just like look at these crazy Christians, but they
hmm
out there, you know what
how
I'm
many
saying?
how many of them was it? How many of them was it?
It was a small group, just like a regular small Hebrew group staying on the corner. A little less than that, maybe about 5 of them. But
Okay.
they was out there. They was out there with a speaker in the marketplace, and I was just like, damn, I'm like they out here doing that shit too. So,
'Cause everybody got
we
to come to the
definitely we
marketplace.
definitely got to come up with different ways to spread our message. Because maybe just political education classes ain't doing it.
What
Maybe.
Ain't enough, man. It ain't enough, man. 'Cause you can tell we've been outworked. We getting outworked, man.
what
Them
let
guys
me
are out there.
let me ask you this question, Zahir, and I think I asked you this before. I think we
Mm,
talked about it offline before, and I've asked a couple other people before about this. Our people are spiritual people. I've been political to the point at one particular point in my process, whereas I wasn't very spiritual. You know what I'm saying? Because I was
yeah.
like, man,
hmm
it's all political. You know what I mean? I'm one of
Yeah.
them brothers that's now doubling back a little bit, trying to figure it out. And when I come to understand, and you correct me if I'm wrong with my terminology and facts or anything, what I understand by ATR, a lot of times it doesn't proselytize its position.
Correct.
So it's kind of like a hands off. You gotta kind of
Know somebody.
know somebody.
Hmm.
How can we work that out with us here being in America, or we can't? Can we or can't we? I guess that's my question because I really feel like our people are spiritual people, and yo, uh, uh, the single mothers can relate because they need food, not they need food, clothes, and shelter, and a lot of them need pampers for their kids. But also knowing that our people are spiritual, like how can we negotiate that?
Well, one, you are right. They don't proselytize, and they kind of are against that because it's a lot of secrecy going on. That was the point of me trying to write my book. Is to try to present a way that we all can become involved. There is Afrocentricity, and getting into that because that has a lot of spiritual traditions and practice. And I've seen people like Baruti and Marimba Ani. I have seen them mixed African spirituality with African centered events, right? So, I've seen them. I think it was Kabuka, the last thing I went to, where they held this event where they were like reading the kids, and they were doing a bunch of rituals, and they invited some of the Babalas and the guests to come in there and perform. So I think what we have to do is when we get together and do more of these African centered events, we just start to intermingle this the people who are in, right, the Babalas and the priests, to come together and kind of just do their thing, right, to do their sacrifices for events, and start to do more libations, start to even incorporate divinations within our groups, and just start to sync with it in a very natural way, so that way we can kind of bring them out without necessarily exposing the secrets, if that makes sense.
Okay, I like that. I like that. I think that's cool because I'm like, how can we? Because I see it as obviously. This is my perspective, and I could be wrong, gentlemen. Just correct me if I'm wrong. I
Mm-hmm.
see more so us here in the Americas, and when I'm saying the Americas, I'm talking about Canada, United States, anywhere really in the Western Hemisphere. That's what I'm talking about. I see us more grasping those spiritual traditions more so than even some of the Africans on the continent. I think a lot of times the African on the continent, for whatever reason, are wanting to work more so be in line with the Europeans at this particular point more so than even us over here. Now, I've never been to the continent. I know you've been a couple of times. I'm not sure if you've been Sundiata, and if you have, please chime in on it. Would y'all agree with that sentiment, or do y'all think it may be kind of that Africans on the continent may get that perspective, at least from some of us over here, unfairly?
Yeah, so that unfortunately, it's very true. The continent is under heavy colonialism, and so how they sort of a way that they make it out of the continent is going through these schools that are Christianized and becoming Christians. Because I'm gonna tell you something. Everybody talks bad about like these religions, right? But like it's a lot of these Christian groups that are giving first aid to the continent, who are
Right.
actively going over there and
Hmm.
really just helping them out in a direct material way, period.
Hmm.
And I mean, I don't care how anti somebody is, if somebody's coming up to you and offering you food and you ain't got it, what I'm saying, you probably gonna become Christian that day, at least. And so like these Christians, they're really, what's funny is like Pan Africans, it's like ideologically we get it, but we don't have a lot of connections to the continent. But these Christians and some of these religious groups, they are some of the most Pan African people like I've ever met. There's a church in Lithonia, here in Lithonia, Georgia, the first African church. And they do a lot of that. I mean, they're in contact with the continent and the Caribbeans. And so that's at least first African church. But a lot of the Christian groups are the ones that's really on the ground doing a lot of stuff. So I think that has something to do with it, but the majority of it is just colonialization. And so right now they're fighting a real fierce battle out there. I go out there and I initiated, I paid some funds for it, and it helps the local economy and that keeps it strong. But those over here we've gone through the cultural revolution where we've said, hey, look, that God is white. But over there it hasn't really happened like that yet. You know what I mean? They haven't went through that cultural revolution just yet. And so they're still dealing with things like skin bleaching and praising like a
Hmm.
white Jesus. And they haven't went through that huge cultural transformation yet where somebody's coming along and saying, no, that ain't it, y'all. We need to be proud of ourselves of who we are as dark-skinned African people. And they're also dealing with globalization where the West as a whole, right? We live here, so we have a different relationship than when it hits there on the continent. So they're looking at it. They're looking at it like we want to be like them, especially in these urban areas. So they think that their traditions are backwards, which is voodoo. So the same way we
Hmm.
might look at some of our cousins and say, man, they backwards or whatever, they're looking at their traditions and they're saying it's backwards, and we want to be up to date and modern in these urban areas. And so, they want to be like the West. So I mean, there's just a lot of issues that are going down, and folks that come over here, they again, African spirituality is very secret. So even if they were, they might even call themselves Christians, right? Just so they feel like they can assimilate it to the population. But in secret, you'll see them at the temple or at the Elay. You'll see them giving offerings to their ancestors, but they'll keep it real hush hush. Don't tell nobody, but they'll be there. So we dealing with all of that.
Let's not try to generalize the whole continent, man, but let's call out the country that stick out the most to me. And
True
I
too.
think that's like Nigeria. I think Nigeria sticks out as a country, man. It's just like, yeah, y'all got a lot of coons over there.
Yeah.
Got a lot of them, bro. You know what I mean? You don't see it for South Africa. You don't see it for some of the other Western countries in Africa. But something about Nigeria, man, that sometimes it's irking me, man. It's just like from the women, man. It's just like they got an interest, strong interest in trying to marry white men and stuff. It's just like Nigerians got a lot of coons, bro. It's like they're like the America in a way, like we got a lot of coon here. They got a lot of coon in that country right there too, man.
You say
That
let's
particular
not,
country,
man.
let's call it out, man, because I don't want to generalize and say the whole continent is like that. But
Right,
that one
right.
country in particular sticks out to me the most because we deal with them the most anyway for them coming over a lot. You know what I
Right,
mean?
Right.
So
right.
yeah, man. Yeah, they got
That's
a lot of coons, bro.
that's interesting.
Unfortunate,
It's true.
unfortunate,
True, man. Like
unfortunate.
that's it's true. We all deal with it, and we haven't, as Pan Africans, I don't think we've been able to deal with it in the best way yet. And so, like, other folks like Ados gets to call that out. We got to learn how to deal with that.
Hmm.
You know.
Mm, mm.
Another thing is, man, is like our people love conservative lifestyle, conservative culture, and I
Mm.
think that would draw them into the Abrahamic faith. The idea of the man being the household, taking care of everything, and the women having a small role and just raising the children and cooking, in the small roles. I think a lot of our people are drawn to that dynamic.
Right,
You know what I mean? And they haven't been exposed to something a different alternative, or saying that you could probably still have that lifestyle, but let's bring it towards African spiritual practice if you choose to. You know what I mean? But if you talk to a lot of, especially a lot of women, man, they're not gonna leave Islam or Christianity because that conservative lifestyle just speaks to them so heavy in their heart. What, the man take care of all the bills, take care of everything, and I get to be I get to be a housewife. Man, that's lovely. You know what I mean? And it's supposed to oppress men like you know sexual appetite. You know what I mean? For it's like you know, it's supposed to by biblical law as like no cheating, no, you know what I mean,
Right.
and that. So I get why our people are so drawn to it. That's why I think spirituality is important because it's gonna take another spirituality to counter that, to come with some principles and culture and ideas of how our people can live, you know?
Gotcha. Gotcha. Now
That's
let,
Hmm.
let,
that's
let me
interesting. Go ahead.
go. No. Go ahead. I'm going. Go ahead, Sadyata. I mean,
I was
Zahir.
gonna say that's interesting, man, because I didn't think about it like that, and you always bring that up, and that's a good point because you know you know if they're looking for that type of thing, we need to be able to bring something that is an alternative that could transform the culture as a whole,
Hmm.
and those attitudes and beliefs. Because that is something Malafia Sante was talking about. Like if it's oppressive towards the women, that may be un-African,
Hmm.
but that's what you're gonna get in these Abraham traditions, you know. And I would think the women would appreciate that more, getting away from but that's what made me interested because you said you think that they actually want that, like they want the man to
Yes,
take.
some do. Some, of course, don't want to be told what to do. But the idea of having a faithful husband who goes and work and
Oh yeah.
not much, he's almost like a robot. You know what I mean? Cause
Right,
he
right, right.
works, come
Mhm.
home. You know. That's it. A lot of it are drawn to that.
Yeah,
Yeah, they
yeah,
drawn to
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's interesting how those Abraham traditions teach us to deny a part of ourselves like that, and that's not
Hmm.
in the African spiritual traditions. How it's like you're supposed to not be sexual, but you're a human being.
Right.
Right, right,
Right.
right. Yeah, that's interesting. What would you gonna ask?
No, I was gonna go back over on Islam. So, just to be clear, at least how you guys see the from your perspective, when you look at the Nation of Islam, and I keep saying the Nation of Islam, I don't want to make it seem like they the only quote unquote Islam is quote so called Islamic group, but I'm just saying Nation Islam since they more so known publicly.
Yeah,
When you look at the Nation Islam and and also all the other groups that fall up under the Sunni Shiite spiritual traditions in America, as far as Black folks, um, do you see as them as separate movements, or do you see them as the sort of kind of as the same as it relates to the cultural conflict that we're talking about, that we're fighting against? Are they the same, or they're two separate entities? Meaning that is that value still with one more so than the other, or are they all in cahoots with each other and they go in the same direction?
they're definitely going in the same direction. It's definitely over for like the whole like Nation of Islam being different at this point. They're definitely the same direction, same religion. It develops from Islam. Elijah or Wallace Farr Muhammad, they had their own conception of it. Malcolm came and blew it up, but Malcolm left, right? And he converted to so-called Orthodox Islam. And he saw that that wasn't going to work to free the people. So, that's why his famous speech about, leave your religion at home. Um, was it Elijah died? I think his son came and took over and converted most of them over to Orthodox Islam. And the Nation of Islam since then, right, has been kind of reduced back to Leslie Muhammad talking about smoking weed makes you gay. So I mean, that's just it's just a regular religion now, like all the other ones. So it's not really any different. It's not really not to me. It's not anything special. It's just slightly different, but not any more different. And I don't think it has the same kind of appeal that it used to have. And we just got to move away from both of them anyway, and just move towards,
Hmm.
a different kind of culture, lifestyle. Like, because it still keeps the same narrative. The Nation of Islam. It's
What's
still a
what's the narrative? What's the narrative?
it's sort of like what he was talking about. Sundiata was talking about. Like it's still the same kind of denial of self. It's the same kind of like it keeps the same dynamics because I think don't they read from the Bible, the Nation of Islam? Like it's still the same kind of Christian Abraham tradition. And if we're gonna move away from it, finally, we have to literally do that, right? We can't just remix Christianity and call it African spirituality. We can't just, you know what I'm saying? We can't remix Islam, you know, and call it something else. It has to be something different, something that is going to take us to where we're trying to go, which I think is a type of kind of cultural nationalism where we're for ourselves, by ourselves, and we really got this culture, our own God that's going to reflect and tell us how we need to live. Yeah.
What do y'all think of brothers like brother what is brother Rizza Islam or
Jokes.
um you got Toily Khalib, you got Most Def, you got all those girls, you got some brothers, man. J Electronica, brothers are heavy into Islam, man. I'm just throwing some names out there, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Lil
Brother
Dirt, Lil
Ben
Dirt,
X,
Lil Dirt.
yeah, little dirt, man. A little what if what do we think of these guys, man? Are they productive to the community, or like, you know, what do y'all honest opinion about these guys, man? Like, 'cause I can't put a finger on them, man. I can't really say are they productive to the cause, really, you know? I don't know. I don't know if they just recruiting for the NOI, or are they doing it for the mass of wanting to see black people
Yeah, I
rise,
mean,
you know?
I think that
I
like I
can't.
said, I think NOI is mostly a joke to me now. So like Risa,
Hmm.
like the information, it's all like it's for the mass consumption. So it's just mostly about like conspiratorial stuff, you know, like to
Hmm.
me it's not any serious nation building politics like it once was. It's just it's conspiracy work, you know, and
Right.
that's I think that's really and conspiracy would be all right if it was conspiratorial towards building our own black nation, the red,
Hmm.
black, and green being African, but it's not.
Right.
A lot of that stuff is anti-African. You know, a
Hmm.
lot of them will sit there and say, "Well, we ain't African. We come from the tribe of Shabazz." You know, that's like some of
Right.
the Mission of Islam stuff. Is like, we were in the wicked wilderness in Africa. That's why our hair turned curly. We're from the tribe of Shabazz, and we're not really African. We're dominant for the whole planet. That bullshit comes out of like the NOI and that conscious community that's so separate from wanting to connect with a continent and culture or people. And so that's why I
Right.
think that this stuff is it just needs to go. And the rest of them, like the rappers, Islam tends to generally be on the side of like the Black Power movement mostly. But like I said, I think it's lost its major appeal now because I don't really see them I don't really see them upholding the politics like we were saying earlier. Once they become Muslim, it stops being a black thing and then it's a human thing, human slash
Hmm.
Arab thing,
Right.
because that's what it is for them. So, I don't really have that same feel for that like I used to when I was younger, right? Because I think we all probably went through some kind of Islamic phase being conscious. So
Hmm.
What the,
I never met one that put African first. I never met her. You know what I mean? It's always been sort of like Islam first. You know, I never met one that was just like, I'm putting this Pan African, this African first. I'm about the unifying us as a whole. Never is that. It's always like trying to separate us from other people, from our people. You know what I mean? Then it becomes a clique, and I think that's the problem that we have here.
alhamdulillah, brother, we don't talk about race like
Right.
that. Alhamdulillah, brother,
Right.
we don't practice the different gods, brother. So on and
Hmm.
so forth. Like, yeah, it divides us.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Dividing us. Yeah.
Just your feet.
This
Yeah.
guy here, man. This guy here, man. Okay, cool. Wow. So we've had a pretty good discussion here on Islam. Talked about the cultural alienation. Even talked about you brought up a good point, Sunday. Talking about the rappers. Like I didn't even think of that point, but yeah, like a lot of our folks that we listen to, Nas and folks like that, they come from that 5%er kind of background. You know what I mean? I guess
Hmm.
that's where a lot of that, Father Allah, and the black man is God, that sort of thing. And um, personally, I just think it's an interesting topic that really needs to be discussed more thoroughly as time passes long, especially when future generations come. Because obviously, at least in my opinion, according to statistics, this thing called ATR is gonna is growing. So it's gonna be something that's gonna consistently and continuously grow. And so it's always gonna be that sort of conflict. I think talking about as it relates to Islam.
Yeah, I wanted to
Uh,
say something too, because like the when you talked about Philly, like I think with
right.
new generations that's gonna come up, I think obviously in Philly, like all the rest of the areas, you probably had some OGs. And you got to think it probably came out of the Black Power era, in these 70s, 60s eras, like with your family, where Islam was probably really dominant and popular. And so when you're talking about the rise of African traditional religions and spirituality, it's going to be important for us to make sure that when we get it, we want to keep it in this Pan African Black nationalist way, and make sure that we capture it before it gets too caught up, more so than a lot of it has in like this bullshit, right? Like this capitalism
Hmm.
and hustler culture. We want to make sure people like us is gonna keep it real and has a good connection, like Sundiata said, with the grassroots, with the people in the community.
Man, Islam really grew in the prison system. Because like
Right.
now that we starting to talk about it, man, we talking about Philly. We seeing now these brothers are Muslims are praying and everything, and still will blow your brains out, dog. Still drilling, still as much as they up here doing this, but still banging hard. So is it working? So is it actually working? Nah, it's not working. When these guys are really really faithful in their religion, and they can still go out and be murderers, still I mean hard, and it's been in these cities for a long time. So I think Islam is appealing to street niggas, and it's not working. It's not changing them. It's not changing their behavior at all.
Right.
Yeah, they
Right.
go to the mosque. They go to the mosque, but they go right back in the streets, man, and doing what they doing. So
That's
we
that
we we, we
Philadelphia. That's that
yeah,
Philadelphia.
man. Long beards and all, man. Long beards and all, man, can tell you everything about the Quran and everything, but man will kill you, will drop you.
It's a
Who who
gang.
el-
It's like
who
Yeah.
like a
who else
prison
come out
gang.
of Philadelphia? Who else come out of Philadelphia? Umar Abdullah
You know what
Johnson. Umar Abdullah Johnson. Y'all remember he was Abdullah Johnson.
Yeah,
Now
yeah,
he
yeah,
Ifatuned it
yeah.
now,
yeah.
but first he was Abdullah.
Hmm.
But yeah, I was gonna say it's attractable to like prison folks and all of that, because Islam itself is very violent. It's a very violent
Hmm.
religion. You
Right.
know, it was birthed out of bloodshed. Yeah, I know they ain't gonna like us saying that, but that's just the truth. It was born out of
Hmm.
bloodshed, and it's a very violent thing. So I just think it complements that, and I think that that's why it has that connection with the NOI too, because the NOI was very violent towards our own
Hmm.
people. So
Right, right.
it's like that violence is what attracts people.
Because how can you love a brother then try to set a bomb up in his home, in his car and everything? You know what I mean? How can you
Yeah,
love
yeah,
someone?
yeah.
I mean, I can't even be a religion for peace, and you moving like that. It's wild, man.
There we go.
It's
Mm,
wild, man.
yeah.
Hey, I'm gonna tell you what. And that shit was so drilled in my dad before he died. Right. I used to ask my dad all the time. You remember when the movie Malcolm X came out?
Uh,
Hmm.
Uh, and everybody started wearing them X hats or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I used to ask my dad about Malcolm X all the time. And you know what? That shit was so drilled in him. Every time I asked him something about Malcolm X, he would have something negative to say about Malcolm X.
Yeah.
Every
Right.
time. It was, man,
Mm-hmm.
hey, it was drilled in here, man. It got in here.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
that was his, he had chose his side. And you know, as you know, for those that was in the nation with Elijah Muhammad during that time, a lot of them, well, all of them, but especially those that was there at that time, anti Malcolm. You know what I mean? So
Right. Right. Right.
he held true to that shit to the end for real.
Mm-hmm.
Gang
Yep.
banging mentality, man. That's
Right.
like you when I first got out 2015 of the army. That is, I was in Charlotte and I went to a NOI temple because they're the only ones doing work in the community, man. And I made the terrible mistake of bringing up Malcolm's name, and they damn near kicked me out the damn temple.
What you say,
For
bro? What you
real.
say? What you say? What
all,
you say, bro?
all, all I swear to God, all I said was like, and brother Malcolm, man, what an inspiration to me that brother was, and they all looked at me and was like, nigga, what? That dude was a turncoat. He was a traitor, needed tongue cut
It's
out. And
crazy,
I
man.
mean,
Yeah.
it was like the beef was still on for them. And I was just like,
Mm-hmm.
that's why I never went back because I was like, there ain't no way you gonna get me to hate Malcolm, like, come on
Right.
now, you know.
Okay. Well, in any closing thoughts, guys, for people that is kind of trying to figure out what can they support and how can they engage folks, at least in terms of Pan Africanism, in terms of African traditional spiritual systems, when they encounter things like Islam or whatever, and they're looking to try to get something that's more home based, something that's more relatable to their communities, something more relatable to their people historically, and they trying to find themselves. What should they do in closing? What should they do?
Number one, I think is to just to study and make sure you don't just believe everything that like the mosque would say or like Islam would say. Make sure that you read this kind of material for centricity from Alafia Sante. Make sure that you get an open mind, and make sure that you always put your people first. Sometimes we have to think about those things in terms of our own political way, our own nationalist way, right? To think about our race first. We think about a red, black, and green, and we think about Africa. That needs to come first, and that needs to supersede this stuff. We have to also try to see how we can connect with folks who are doing it in communities. So that would be my advice would be to study more um, books about your own people, about your own culture. That's not influenced from that, and you could read stuff that's influenced by that, but don't believe it to be the all. That was our mistake then, is we didn't have all this new information, so we thought Islam
Right.
was it. So just study beyond Islam and always keep yourself connected to the continent.
And we got to get out here and work as Pan Africans, man. We got to give our people
Yeah.
other options. You know,
Or
we talking about Philadelphia, we talking about Chicago, these cities and everything. Man, we need our camps there to give them a different alternative.
yeah.
So we just got to put in the work.
Because I mean, like I just thought about it. I don't know why I just thought about it. Remember we that post I shared about the brothers on the continent that destroyed their own shrine because they were Muslims
Right.
now. It's going around
Hmm.
Facebook. Like, look at that stuff. Like, what kind of religion would cause you to destroy your own ancestor shrine and make you
Hmm.
call your own culture evil while
Right.
calling their thing divine? That's what you got to think about,
Hmm.
Michelle.
That's deep. That's deep, gentlemen. We appreciate you very much so for joining on and giving us these lessons, these life lessons, this reality, this medicine that we everybody don't like taking a spoonful of medicine. They give that face, especially kids do. But we appreciate you for taking your time out to do that. If anyone out there in YouTube land, if it's something that you like, you can like, share, subscribe. Zahir been on here like 5 or 6 times, and he always giving many lessons and whatnot. So we're gonna keep it going. But we wanted to discuss Islam and relation to Black folks. This is something that's been um, ongoing conversation. It is going to be an ongoing conversation for us as Black people, as African people, whatever you identify yourself as. This is going to be an ongoing. We're going to deal with Islam, but we need to deal with Islam the right way from our own perspective that's beneficial to us as a community and as a people. At least that's my perspective.
Right.
Peace.
Hey, peace.
Peace and black power.